It's a painful reminder, I suppose, Sue, that this is a heartbreaking time for so many, those who've lost their loved ones, their lives and their livelihoods. And I suppose that human response has to be at the heart of everything that the government does right now, doesn't it?
Kia ora, yes, and I'm sure everyone is thinking again of this terrible loss and fearful of how much more loss there might be as well. I hope that housing, that food, that security, but also mental health support goes into local communities everywhere that have been affected. People get angry, they get sad. I mean, all these emotions come up. We saw the apple orchard person before, and I'm sure everyone felt. But so many people are in various situations of disaster, unexpected tragedy and loss, and that our mental health system is not great. But I hope that ways are found even to offer much more assistance through local organisations, through hapu, iwi and whānau, through all the different groups, so that people do get some sense that people care, that the rest of the country cares.
Yeah, it's so important.
And that it's there, really right there in their place, in their community. But of course, beside that, people need power, they need water, they need sewage, they need food, they need a roof that's safe.
Yeah, it is, and we've been through this compounding trauma, haven't we? I'm hearing that people are tired, they are exhausted. You know, this comes at a time too when people are already stretched. We have a looming recession, we have high inflation, we have a labour shortage already. Some signals from Grant Robertson yesterday that they are looking at visa waivers to try and bring people in. We are going to need to do sort of things like that, aren't we, Dita?
We are going to. He talked at Simon's event about the aftermath of the Christchurch earthquake and how working people were brought in to help with that rebuild. I mean, I think, as always with these things, the response needs to be so integrated across so many things. I mean, the fact that people are so cut off and these inequalities have really been exacerbated by this shows that we need an all-of-government approach, and also we need a bipartisan approach, because if we get a new government that has a completely different view, and so far they really haven't said anything much about what they believe about climate change and how it needs to be mitigated and adapted to, we could be facing these issues all over again. You know, it really needs a very strong response from both sides.
Bipartisanship yes. in this moment. Simon, I want to talk to you as a former infrastructure minister. This is one of the biggest challenges. It's a little further down the road, I suppose, than these immediate needs, but this is one of the biggest challenges, isn't it? Because we have high needs in areas which are servicing quite small numbers of people sometimes, as on top of those, you know, the big infrastructure deficit.
I would suggest it's the biggest long-term issue. I mean, talking with the Transport Minister and the Finance Minister this week, they're both clear transport is billions and billions and billions of dollars. So, I mean, if you just think in the short term, it will have a massive effect on the budget. It's going to change everything in relation to that budget. I think the good news is, actually, I would suggest we can afford it. We have low public debt. By the way, local government's never going to be able to pay for this. It's always going to require central government. What I would suggest, dare I say it, but I think of examples like Canterbury, like Kaikoura, it'll require special legislation. To Dita's point, I would be very surprised if anyone in the Parliament voted against that sort of approach. It requires joined up agencies and it requires ministers to really grip it and stay with it.
It's likely that we're going to need special legislation. I can't see any other way for the government to get this work done. A minister and an agency, that has got to be where the government is heading, isn't it, Dita?
Yes, absolutely. And I think they will get bipartisan support for that. But the issue is the longer term issue. And that's where I think there is going to be a problem, because we haven't seen signals from other parties that they accept that climate change has to be paid for and mitigated by all parts of society.
No, I partly accept that. I think there is consensus around adaptation. You say that word and everyone's going to nod, and we probably should have been having that conversation, doing more about for years. I think what's going to be more tricky is this managed retreat. That can't be, I think, is what the centre-right will say, an excuse for not building back some of these roads that have been there for generations. Doesn't mean no changes, right? We all get that, but I don't think it can be an excuse for doing less than is required.
But it has to be better, and it has to be different, it has to be more.
I can see you've got something to say.
As it was in Kaikoura, can I say, as a former transport minister.
It's no use going back to the past or thinking of the solutions from yesterday. We need solutions for tomorrow now. This is an opportunity to build for a future of the realities of climate change and what's really going on in transport, infrastructure, in housing, everywhere. And the government needs to really have the courage to step up, move fast, and really think beyond the borders of current thinking.
Yeah, well, now is the hour, isn't it, to use this and the momentum, I suppose, in that agreement. Simon Bridges, Sue Bradford and Dita Devoni, thank you so much for joining us.